What if the key to rebuilding the third temple in Jerusalem is tied to a mysterious ancient ritual? Could the appearance of a perfect red heifer signal the beginning of the Messianic era? What does this prophecy mean for Israel's future and for the world? Today's guest is here to answer these important questions and more right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to SkyWatch TV. I'm Joe Horn. Today, we're about to start a conversation that I promise is going to shatter what you think you know about Bible prophecy. But before we dive right into the conversation, let me introduce who's here. He pastored for 16 years and holds a degree in biblical archaeology. He is the director of the Psalm 19 Project and co-host of the Prophecy Watchers TV program and podcast. Please welcome Mondo Gonzales. Welcome, Mondo. Such a treat to have you here today. And of course, we're talking about Mondo's brand new book, and I'll bring this up on the screen for you to see this beautiful cover. The Mystery of the Red Heifer, Israel, the End Times, and the Building of the Third Temple. You know, Bible prophecy is something that you folks at Prophecy Watchers chronic every single week. Somebody from around the globe with something very important to say visits your platform and shares something significant about what's happening all around us in terms of Bible prophecy. It's something we talk about often here at SkyWatch TV, the imminency of the return of Jesus Christ. There's something that comes up quite a lot in these conversations that is either misinterpreted or gets lost altogether, especially if you look at today's entertainment-based church, a lot of the pulpits across the United States. Sharon's already nodding along in agreement. Talking about the red heifer, before we dive into that, Mondo, what inspired you to write this topic? And what are the ritual implications of the red heifer and how that plays out in end times Bible prophecy?
I've been watching prophecy for about 30 years, since I first got saved at 18. So it's been a hobby and certainly been a love. And then I started learning and reading about the red heifer. And you would see back really in the 90s, there was a couple red heifers, one here, one there. And then you'd get excited a little bit like, oh, maybe this is it. And then you'd see it and become disqualified. And you'd have to wait a long time before another one came around, if another one came around. And then after that, I went to Moody Bible Institute, and I got a degree in Jewish studies, which I studied rabbinic theology and other things. And so I kind of have this background. And so in September of 2022, 5 red cows at once are flown to Israel. And I thought, you know what? I want to write a book about this, because just to help the Christian understand why should we even care about cows? That's kind of one of the chapters I have in there. Why should we care about cows and what that means? But so prophetically speaking, it means quite a bit. And so that's kind of what led me down the road in order to write what I really wanted to be as the definitive guidebook.
Well, for those just joining us or for those unfamiliar, what is a heifer? I had staff kind of asking me, what is that? And they actually saw some of my texts and said, wait a minute, is this really the title of the book? They thought maybe autocorrect, speech to talk, fixed it and made it something else. But what is a heifer?
Yeah, very simple. It's a female cow. So it's not a calf, it's not a bull, it's just a female cow. And it comes from the Bible in the sense that you have bring a heifer.
Right.
And so whether it's King James or New King James, and so that language kind of has stuck.
And a heifer has not been bred yet.
Right. Yes.
Correct.
That's
Yes.
a cow.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And it's had a calf. So this is a pure
Female cow.
female cow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Female heifer, yeah. And why a heifer, though? When the Lord says, I want you to burn a heifer and use those ashes as part of the cleansing ceremony, why couldn't it be a bull?
Mm-hmm. What you'll find is, especially in the rabbinic writings, they will say very clearly that Solomon, in all of his wisdom, understood all of the commandments, and even some of them being very mysterious. But even Solomon did not understand the red heifer commandment. So it's weird that they bring this exact commandment up. And so throughout the last 2,000 years in all the rabbinic writings, this is one thing that they claim that it's still mysterious.
And it's a rare event. If I understand my biology, that I have a degree in that. Mm-hmm. Don't know everything, but I'll try. It's unusual to have a female born with the red coat color that is perfectly red. So this is a rare event.
It's a very special animal, and this is why for the last 2,000 years there's been very few of them. And so they've tried breeding programs, and to have one stay red and for up to the time of the requirements, which there are many, again, is very, very special and unique. And so to me, the fact that you have 5 at the same time that were brought over, and there's more actually. There's 18 or 19 more in behind the scenes, shows us again that we are living in very exciting times. This is something that hasn't happened. There has not been a qualified red heifer in over 2,000 years, and now there's at least 3.
Let's slow down for just a minute. The people watching this program and they've heard the phrase red heifer used several times, and they're still trying to kind of play catch up with you, Mondo. We often hear about the red heifer in terms of prophecy and something to do with the building of the third temple. But before we get into that, let's slow down. Like I said, let's build out some groundwork. And feel free to take your time, because I know there's a lot here to unpack. But what exactly was the red heifer in the Bible, and what was the importance of the ritual that required it?
I'm really glad you asked that, because as Christians, we live under the new covenant. So we don't think in terms of an Old Testament believer going to the temple 3 times a year, which was required by God. And when you have a temple, when you have a ritualistic, or I wouldn't say occultic, but that's occultic is not necessarily bad in one sense. Just hear me out. This is the way archaeologists talk about occultic scenario or occultic piece. It just means you have a temple. Well, God designed that when you approach the temple, you had to be ritually pure. And this is why when you go to Numbers, it's in Numbers chapter 19, where if you were with your family members, let's say the night before or a week before, and you were getting ready to go to the temple to give your offering to the Lord for Passover or one of the feasts, but your wife died or your father died, you just became ritually impure. And so God said, okay, you can't come to the temple in this way. So you need to find a way to become purified. And so what God did is he orchestrated a very inexpensive way, which is, I'm going to give you the red heifer. I'm going to have you bring it. You're going to burn it. You're going to take the ashes. You can mix it with water. And then through a week-long ceremony, you can sprinkle people with it on the 3rd day and the 7th day. And they would remove this ritual impurity of death. And so he made it, again, very nice, very inexpensive. You just had to go through the process. But as Christians, we just think, I'm forgiven or I'm not forgiven of my sins. We don't think in terms, because we don't go to a temple this way. This is why it's important for us when we think about what the Jews are doing. The religious Jews don't think under the new covenant like we do. They don't understand the Messiah and Jesus' death for them yet. So they're still thinking in terms of everybody is ritually impure, because if you're born in a hospital, you're automatically born and you become impure just because there's death in that area and other ways. So for them, they're thinking in terms of, like the Bible does under Moses, we need to find a way to become ritually pure, which requires the ashes of the red heifer.
What have been some of the rabbinic interpretations from the past until today about the red heifer ritual?
Some of the pictures that people see are, they'll see the rabbis when they were in Texas. They were with their magnifying glass, and they're like, what are they looking for? Well, in the Bible, there's several requirements. As we said, it has to be red. It doesn't tell us how red. It has to be female that's never given birth. It can't have ever worked. It has to have no blemishes. And so those are what the Bible gives, what God gives. Well, the rabbis in their desire are like, okay, well, red, well, we want to make sure it's really red so that we don't violate possibly what God says. So they created these other rules, as an example, where if you can have let's say a black hair on the head, and you can have a black hair on the tail, and you think, okay, well, there's more than one hair, but you can't have more than one non-red hair in the same follicle. So this is why they're down there. They're looking at follicles.
Oh, my word.
So it's okay. Again, but this is why you'll never see a patch on the red cow, a patch of white, because now it would be coming out of the same follicles. This is where they've added some things in their fences in the Talmudic tradition, the Mishnaic tradition. One of the other things they'll talk about is maybe even sometimes the debates. If a bird lands on it, did that ruin it? If a towel's thrown on it, did it ruin it? This is where the fascinating thing about it is, this is their stringent, extremely stringent.
Sure.
And yet, even in the midst of that, there's still 3 that have become qualified. So that tells you, it makes you wonder, God is allowing these things, these really very miraculous things to happen in a very stringent way in order to accomplish their preparation for that coming temple.
Can you shed some light on the perspectives of Daniel, Jesus, Paul, and John concerning the prophecy of a coming third temple? Because everybody understands that is so pinnacle to Bible prophecy.
This really is the key, because there is no specific prophecy about the red heifer itself. It's in Numbers 19, and we see the language appear in the book of Hebrews as well. But what we know is, as we have our disagreements with our Christian brothers who aren't necessarily futurist, they'll say, oh, the temple, it's symbolic. But we look at Daniel. He said in Daniel 9:27 that the offerings and the sacrifices would cease. So that tells us offerings and sacrifices. Well, that tells us at some future time there has to be some offerings and sacrifices, so a temple has to be built. Jesus says in Matthew 24:15, when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, that's a very specific location that people understand. Holy of holies, holy place, the outer courts. And Paul, as well in 2 Thessalonians 2, describes the Antichrist sitting in the temple of God, declaring himself to be God. It's hard to spiritualize that, okay? And then we see in Revelation 11 as well that John is told to measure, and there's a measuring going on, not only of the temple area, the outer courts, the altar, the people, the outer courts are given over to the Gentiles for 42 months. And so those are all very physical language, the idea of, again, how do you spiritualize those things or make them a symbol? It's interesting, too, that the Greek word there for measuring is used in other places in Revelation to measure something physical. And so you have these little hints that based on all those passages, which is why most of us believe a coming temple is going to be rebuilt. Now, I'll just say this. We could talk about all the things that are happening that the Jewish rabbis are doing, but I don't believe for 1 minute that the Jewish rabbis are trying to rebuild the temple in order to fulfill Christian prophecy. Not at all. But we see all of this happening there, and we go, hey, we know it's going to happen. And they have no idea because their goal is just simply to follow the commandments of Moses. I mean, Moses is really their king in many ways.
Well, they have a belief, don't they, that Messiah will not come until the temple is built. And so they have a great a need to build that temple and a need to build it soon. So the arrival of these heifers, that at least 3 of them still qualify, do you think we're going to see a ceremony soon?
So the temple, they've been working on that for a long time, but they know, hypothetically, they could build it tomorrow, hypothetically. They just couldn't use it. They need the red heifer and the ashes in order to cleanse the people, in order to cleanse the area. I mean, so they could build it, but it would be impure. It's ritually defiled. And so this is why, logically, they have come to the conclusion, well, great, the temple's here, but we need this pre-existing thing, which the Bible says. So that's why when we think about Christian prophecy, we talk about the red heifer because of that. So coming back to the second thing is, there's a lot of chronology there. With Trump coming in, you can find rabbis there now. They look at him as a Messiah type, like a Cyrus type Messiah, a non-Jewish Messiah. But they'll say, this is it. Now that Trump's in, he loves Israel, and we see he's supporting Israel. The hopes are extreme. This is the highest hopes have been is right now because they believe that Trump will defend their position in order to do these things because there's been this acrimony that's happened with when Hamas came out in January of 24 saying we attacked in October of 23 because of the red cows. They mentioned them specifically.
Wow.
Yeah.
They do.
Wow.
So that's what caused everything to squash it because originally the ceremony was going to happen at Passover of 24, but when Hamas came out in January of 24, it squashed everything. But now that Trump's in, the boldness is there.
Well, if the temple is going on the Temple Mount, it's a bit crowded right now.
It is.
How are they going to reconcile that?
You'll have 10 rabbis, and they'll all contradict each other, and
20
that's just the
opinions.
nature.
Yes,
It really is.
exactly.
It's kind of they'll say that that the idea of 2 rabbis and 5 opinions is really true. So, but right now there's some rabbis that are thinking it's got to be on the Dome of the Rock, it's got to be removed. Others, I actually saw architectural plans of where they have it just north of the Dome of the Rock with a big wall there, a 20-foot wall, the place of the Dome of the Spirits. I know you guys have seen that on the Temple Mount.
Yes.
That's one of the locations that is possible by archaeologists. Right now we have our opinions, but if it comes to the point where they have a level of sovereignty on the Temple Mount, imagine being able to excavate. If they excavate, they could say, look, it's undeniable. What we thought it was here, and now we have proof that it maybe is to the north or whatever. So as much as we think we know right now, even amongst the status quo, things could change based on further archaeological excavation.
So why do you think, there's this background, the Jewish religious leaders of today pushing so hard for the building of the third temple?
When people have asked that question, some of them are nice and some of them are mean. They'll say like, "Why are you asking a stupid question?" Because it's a commandment. End of story. God told us to do it. That's it. It's a mitzvah. So for them, they don't think in terms of trying to even bring in the Messianic era, even though they acknowledge that. But they will say quite clearly, God said it, we need to obey it. End of story. And so they have a push, and they also see the momentum, because this is the most religious government in the history of Israel right now, starting in December of 22. And so to see all this happen, they're also looking, they've been working on it, again, for a long time, since at least the 80s, the Temple Institute. And so they're opportunistic, which I don't blame them. And they're thinking, this could be it. We don't want to miss our opportunity.
Right.
What's interesting, and this is another aspect of the discussion that we as Christians may miss, is that Jews are just as divided and fractured, sectarian as we Christians are. And there are friends of ours over there, Orthodox Jews, who say, we don't want the third temple because it would mean World War III. We've got the synagogues now. We don't need the temple. So while there are some who are very vocal in saying, yes, the time is now to do this, there are others who are saying, no, we don't want this. So they're still fighting with one another. And of course, then you've got a very large percentage of the population over there that's just flat out socialist, and they don't want it at all.
Absolutely. There's a lot of division that's happening, not only between the secular and the religious, but even among the religious. Because remember, just like in Jesus' day, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they were all trying to argue and fight for influence among the people. And so it's the same way today within the Orthodoxy is well, why are you guys going to be the one that are performing the ceremony? Why is it in our faction? So it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
I have friends that have basically, in so many words, say, Bible prophecy, Bible prophecy, Bible prophecy. You guys talk about it every week. Let me know when they start building the third temple, and I'll start tuning in. Like for them, that is so de facto as the only real signal to really pay any attention to. I mean, it's that paramount.
Yeah.
Let me know when they start breaking ground, and I'll start tuning in.
Could it be a tabernacle?
What most likely would happen is if and when the red heifer ceremony happens, and then they get the political permission to build the temple, I think the first thing they'll do is they'll put up a tabernacle.
Yeah.
Because you can start sacrifices immediately on the Temple Mount with that, and then they would build and they would bring in the permanent structures around it. Because again, they see it as a commandment. Every day that we don't do this is a day of disobedience against God's commandments.
What is the mystery of the red heifer according to the Bible and Jewish leaders?
What I think is fascinating is the mystery comes down to, again, thinking about it in a ritual purity sense. So when the priest comes in, who has to be ritually pure, when he performs the ceremony, he becomes ritually impure. And then the ashes, when the person that is pure to go collects the ashes, he becomes impure. So now you have these ashes, which will then later purify people, make people impure. So this is where their mind is twisted. Like, how in the world?
Yeah.
But I think for us as New Testament believers, New Covenant believers, when you put Jesus right in the center, we recognize that Jesus became impure, 2 Corinthians 5. He took on sin in that sense. Yes. But through that, we become purified forever. And so if you just put Jesus right in the center of it, it solves the mystery that they can't see yet. Because the red heifer, again, points to all of the things in the Old Testament are shadows of the substance, which is Jesus himself. And we see in Hebrews 9, the writer says that. They're going to get there, we know, by the end of the tribulation period, but they're not there yet. And 2 Corinthians 3 says that there's a veil over their eyes, but the veil is taken away when they put Jesus in the middle.
Oh, wow. Well, the heifer has to be sacrificed on the Mount of Olives. And between the Temple Mount and the Mount of Olives are a whole bunch of graves. They're not allowed to walk over graves.
Not at all.
And sometimes they don't walk anywhere because they're afraid somebody might be buried that they don't know about.
They will be very careful. This is not a sacrifice. Like if you go to the Temple Institute Facebook page, oh man, they get furious at these Christians. Wow. And it's a ceremony. It's not a sacrifice. Why? Sacrifices take place on the Temple Mount in the altar that's there. This is a ceremony. It's a burning. Certainly they kill the animal on the Mount of Olives, but outside. But it is, again, it's fascinating to watch how they define it. They use it as a way to say, oh, you're just an ignorant Christian. Why are you trying to tell us about our stuff? Right. We're like, yeah, but you really have no idea the fullness of what is being said there. So I've gotten yelled at myself on it, so that's why I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, you sound a little bit like you're talking from experience.
Yes. Yep.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can support the ministry of SkyWatch TV in our continued efforts to share the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the four corners of the world and receive your very own copy of this urgent new work when you order The Mystery of the Red Heifer special offer. Not only does this incredible opportunity include Mondo Gonzales' new book, The Mystery of the Red Heifer, Israel, the End Times, and the Building of the Third Temple, but it also includes the best-selling book, The Rabbis, Donald Trump, and the Top Secret Plan to Build the Third Temple with 5-part television series companion DVD by the late Dr. Thomas Horn. This incredible book with companion DVD uncovers for the first time the mysteries of the Antichrist's rise and his secret plans already in motion to build the abomination of desolation, the event that will trigger the apocalypse. These works reveal the connection between Donald Trump and the Third Temple. Is he Israel's modern-day King Cyrus, chosen by God to oversee its construction? Temple treasures. The recent archaeological discoveries that could reveal the Ark of the Covenant and other relics that tie directly to the construction of the Third Temple. And the abomination of desolation. What it is, why it's coming, and how world leaders are positioning themselves for its arrival right now. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of over $60. Yours now for your donation of only $45, which includes free shipping to all U.S. orders. You can scan the QR code on your screen using the camera app on your phone for instant access to this special opportunity. You can also visit us at skywatchtvstore.com or call 1-844-750-4985 and ask for the Mystery of the Red Heifer special offer right now. It's not a special opportunity you're going to want to miss. Mondo, with just a few minutes left on the clock, why is the building of a third temple important for us prophecy-minded Christians? Why are we paying attention to this?
It's interesting that there is, again, a lot of frustration and division in the church over this, because you have those, again, that people that love Jesus, our brothers and sisters, that don't see any value in a future for Israel or a temple, and don't you know the temple is spiritual and stuff like this. But for us, for those that understand, and we take the Bible straight forward, and literally, if you want to use that term, we see, as we mentioned earlier, the 4 passages that speak about this. People can go visit the Temple Institute. They truly, and this is not an exaggeration, they have everything completed. They have everything done, ready to go. They even have cornerstones done that they try to bring up on the Temple Mount, and they always get turned around by the police because they're trying to lay claim to the sovereignty. So you go there, you can see the garments, you can see the priestly garments, you can see the golden menorah, the altar of incense, all covered in real gold. All the vessels, the copper vessels, they have harps. They meet once a month, the Levitical priests who are training and composing music. It's pretty fascinating.
Wow.
There's only one thing left, and it is the red heifer. That ceremony is there. So when we see this, we know that by the middle of the tribulation, at the latest, the sacrifices and the offerings will be taking place and will be ceased. We don't know whether they've been going on for a week or a month, but my impression, at least from the scripture, is that in Daniel 9:27, when the Antichrist makes the agreement with Israel, this is their agreement to reestablish Moses. That it's all about Moses for them, and which then leads to the temple being built. So when we see all these preparations, this wasn't happening 75 years ago. So are we living at the end of the age? So that's why it's exciting in the sense that it shows us that I'm not excited for the temple itself. I'm excited that it shows that Jesus is coming back.
Right.
And he's going to fix the world. I mean, I think we all want that. It's,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
horrible. So that's why we're excited, is that it's showing us that we are at the end of the age.
Amen.
There's probably people, Mondo, that want your opinion on this. If this moment where the temple begins to be constructed, if this signals so many prophetic sequences in the times that we're living in, people might be wondering, well, what's already been done to maybe get it started? Have they drawn the blueprints? Have they started laying the foundations? What needs to be done? Or what are we waiting on? Or how close are we?
Yeah, if people can go, again, to the Temple Institute site, also look at the Temple Institute YouTube page, because there's several groups. There's the Temple Institute, there's the Temple Mount Faithful, there's the thirdtemple.com website. The Temple Mount Faithful group was started by Gershon Solomon back after the Six-Day War in 1967. He actually just died about 18 months ago or so. And his dream was to reestablish the temple. And so when they got control of Jerusalem in 67, there was the groundswell now of this is the first time, since the first century where we actually have control. Now they immediately gave back religious control to the Waqf, the WAQF, which is a Jordanian religious group. But we also see as well that the exciting thing about it is we talk about Abrahamic Accords and all these political things. Well, Saudi Arabia, they have offered to take over management of the Temple Mount from Jordan. Again, we look at geopolitically how this could happen. But if you go there at the temple site, you can see they have videos of what a modern temple, a temple would look like in a modern context. They have architectural plans. They've spent over $100,000 on those already done, all the various things. And so when you sit back, again, the last thing is just the red heifer. And now there's 3 of the 5. 2 have been disqualified. There are 3 left. I'm not a sensationalist type person, but to me, I think first time in 2,000 years, we have 3 qualified red heifers that could be potentially offered as a ceremony tomorrow.
Yeah, but they are at Shiloh, which
They're at
has
Shiloh.
a lot of visitors, and they're not supposed to be touched.
There's not strict security there.
No, I
So-
know.
We've been there, yeah.
Yeah, so you know this.
Oh, yeah.
And so you're not supposed to touch them, and they'll tell you that. But there's nobody guarding them. So I do like conspiracy. I'm skeptical whether those are the real ones or not. Because of security reasons, it would seem very foolish to leave them open.
They're red herring heifers?
Possibly.
Wait a minute.
If these are there as decoys, is it possible, how do we process it then? What should we be looking for?
There's no doubt that the ceremony on the Mount of Olives is a very central location. It's very crowded there. And so a lot of people have asked about whether they've done it in secret or not. And again, we could talk about that because I think it's kind of fascinating to discuss.
That's why we'll have to have you come back next week. Do you guys want Mondo back? Of course you do. Next week, Mondo will return to talk about the red heifer's role in rebuilding the Third Temple and how it all connects to the New Testament. Unfortunately, we're all out of time for everybody here in studio, everybody up here on panel. Mondo, thanks so much for being here today. I'm Joe Ardishorn. Keep your eyes on the prize, which is Jesus Christ. We'll be back. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can support the ministry of SkyWatch TV and our continued efforts to share the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the 4 corners of the world and receive your very own copy of this urgent new work when you order the Mystery of the Red Heifer special offer. Not only does this incredible opportunity include Mondo Gonzales' new book, The Mystery of the Red Heifer, Israel, the End Times and the Building of the Third Temple, but it also includes the best-selling book, The Rabbis, Donald Trump, and the Top Secret Plan to Build the Third Temple with 5-part television series companion DVD by the late Dr. Thomas Horn. This incredible book with companion DVD uncovers for the first time the mysteries of the Antichrist's rise and his secret plans already in motion to build the abomination of desolation, the event that will trigger the apocalypse. These works reveal the connection between Donald Trump and the Third Temple. Is he Israel's modern-day King Cyrus, chosen by God to oversee its construction? Temple treasures. The recent archaeological discoveries that could reveal the Ark of the Covenant and other relics that tie directly to the construction of the Third Temple. And the abomination of desolation. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of over $60. Yours now for your donation of only $45, which includes free shipping to all U.S. orders. You can scan the QR code on your screen using the camera app on your phone for instant access to this special opportunity. You can also visit us at skywatchtvstore.com or call 1-844-750-4985 and ask for the Mystery of the Red Heifer special offer right now.